South Korea this week revealed an exciting glimpse of the country's first ever homegrown space rocket, the Nuri. It was the first time that a model of the fully assembled KSLV-2 has been revealed, 11 years after scientists began developing the three-stage rocket. Its launch in October would make South Korea the seventh country in the world to secure its own technology for space launch vehicles, enabling the country to actively join global efforts to explore and expand into the final frontier, particularly now that Seoul and Washington have inked agreements to bolster space cooperation. To illuminate the future of space exploration for South Korea and the international community, I'm joined by Yoo Joonkoo, Research Professor of the Center for International Law at Korea National Diplomat Academy, and Michelle L.D. Hanlon, Co-Director of Air and Space Law at the University of Mississippi and co-founder of For All Moonkind, joining us from the US. Well, thank you both so much for joining us. And well, let's begin with you, Professor Yoo, on the phone for us here. Now, the launch of the Nuri is just a couple of months away now, and after that, South Korea is also planning to launch its first robotic lunar exploration mission, Korea Pathfinder Lunar Orbiter, next summer. So, well, what are the country's goals for moon exploration, and just how far along are they?
Yeah, this is a very important moment for the Korean space exploration stage. And then the Korea has a three-stage plan for moon exploration. The first, this is really the beginning stage for the joining the Artemis Accords, and then maybe in a few years later, we're going to try to our own some exploration system, particularly to using the Korean types and then the launch vehicle, and then maybe after the second stage, in the final stage is starting in 2030. We're gonna probably try to the experiment of the docking and then re-entry systems. So this is just first stage, and then it's a good moment for Korean space diplomacy, the development exploration program.
Right, so there have been various stages of South Korea's space program, and it's really exciting to see it coming together. And well, Dr. Hanlon, now, what do you see as being both the significance and the potential of South Korea's homegrown space rocket?
Oh, I think it's just tremendous. I got the chills watching that video that you showed. To have, at For All Moonkind, we believe in the human achievements in space belong to all of us on Earth. And so we hope that everybody on the world is inspired by the Apollo missions, for example, and setting foot on the moon. But even more than that, space is for everyone. And to see more and more countries and more nations and more people have the ability to reach space on their own without having to hitch a ride with somebody else just means that we're bringing more diversity into space, which is what we need for humans to succeed in space and on Earth. And I'm really excited to see South Korea build this rocket on their own. They're bringing their own ideas to the table. You're bringing your own ideas to the table. You're bringing your own dreams to the table. You're bringing your own curiosities and innovations to the table. And these are things that nobody else in the world can bring to the moon and into space. And so this is a very significant time for South Korea. Even more, it's a very significant time for all of humanity because space is our future. We are going to get so many resources from space. We're going to learn about ourselves from space. And the more and more we can get people to space from more and more launch sites on Earth, the better.
Now, Professor Yoo, after President Moon Jae-in and US President Joe Biden's summit last month, South Korea became the 10th country to join the Artemis Accords, a US-led agreement that sets out principles for a peaceful space exploration. So what is the significance of South Korea joining this initiative and really signing these accords?
Yes, this is very significant event for between the Korea and the US. Let me quote that last administrator mentioning this event. She's saying the partnering in deep space will ensure our mission carry out in accordance with important universal principles like transparency, safety, and peaceful exploration. This notion implies to the whole international society how we develop the peaceful use of outer space, and also this moon exploration is a very much comprehensive use of outer space, not only for the economic use of outer space, but also scientific technology development issue. Also, it can contribute to the safety and security issue of outer space. So this is very significant step for the space development, not only Korean US side, but also to the international society as a whole.
Professor Hanlon, what does the Artemis Accords really stand for, and what does partaking in the Accords mean for South Korea?
So that's a great question, because a lot of people think this is a binding treaty, but it's not. The Artemis Accords are principles and guidelines, and they're a political commitment. They're an agreement to work together. They're a shared vision, if you will, of space and how space should be explored. What they do, there's an outer space treaty that was negotiated in 1967, which lays out sort of, we call it the Magna Carta of space, and it lays out these very baseline framework for how humans should explore space and keep the peace in space. The Artemis Accords start to look at the next step, though, because in 1967, we didn't think about mining the moon or mining an asteroid. And the United States has worked with all these nations on these Artemis Accords to think about how do we interpret the Outer Space Treaty and how do we fill in the gaps in the Outer Space Treaties. So one thing that's really wonderful with respect to these accords that the Outer Space Treaty does not do is it has a whole section on interoperability, which means that all of the partner nations in the Artemis Accords are going to make sure that their instruments fit together, that their equipment works together, so that we don't have waste in space. And so we don't have a situation where there's an emergency and we say, oh no, my square peg doesn't fit in your round hole. And so this is how we collaborate in space while also sort of bringing in our national interests into space, which is, I personally look forward to a time when we have collaboration without a need for a sovereign structure. But this is the first step in that path. And Artemis is a vision to get humans to the moon, but beyond to Mars and even beyond that. And humans can't do that. One nation can't do that alone. And I'm just really thrilled with the Artemis Accords and the fact that nations are finally coming together to explore together and to share this vision of a peaceful space and sustainable space exploration.
Now, Professor Yoo, how do you expect South Korea and the US to deepen their space cooperation in light of these developments? Which areas do you think have the most potential for collaboration?
Okay, that's a great question. Let me tell you the important criteria, particularly in bilateral space cooperation. As she mentioned, that there is two criteria for compatibility and mutually benefit to both sides, and then in a very comprehensive manner. As I mentioned before, that space cooperation is not only focused on the economic benefits, but also we have to build up the norms building, and also we have to respond on the emerging new space threat, and then also we have to cooperate with the U.S. to building up the capacity building, confidence building measures. So particularly, I want to emphasize on the space awareness situation awareness area. There is lots of issues to respond on. The issue I just mentioned, the norms building, and then respond on the space new threats. So I think SSA also is a very important area, the both sides to cooperate with each other.
Professor Hanlon, how do you expect South Korea and the US to really collaborate in space? I mean, what do you think South Korea could bring to the table?
Oh, I think South Korea brings so much to the table just in terms of all your new ideas and all the companies and all the things that we haven't even thought about. And that's what's so wonderful about space, right? Because it is a boundless frontier. There's boundless opportunity. When we talk about the mechanics of the technical, what is South Korea going to be able to offer? I think what right now you bring to the table different minds and you offer different solutions and you think about problems in different ways. But ultimately, the work that South Korea is doing, the satellite that you're planning to send around the moon, it's going to be looking for things. It's going to be mapping the moon all the time. What's really brilliant about space is every time any human sends something to space, we share that information. So we have shared a lot of information about the moon, and we're really looking forward to seeing that the information that that South Korea is going to be able to share with the Artemis Accords partners and with all of humanity with respect to what they discover on the moon.
And of course, Dr. Hanlon, America with NASA, they've been trying to get a lot of countries on board with their moon mission, including Russia. But of course, Russia has decided to maybe go another way. And earlier this year, there were reports that China and Russia signed a memorandum of understanding to build their own international lunar research station. What impact do you think this joint effort could have on the United States and on international security, which is becoming an increasing concern?
Absolutely. And I think, we have our terrestrial political differences down here. And it's not really particularly surprising that there's going to be competition. Competition is good. That's how the competition pushed Apollo to the moon, pushed humans to the moon far sooner than we really actually belong to be there. And so having the Chinese and the Russians produce this concept of a base, I think is actually fantastic. All of these countries are signatories to the Outer Space Treaty, which states unequivocally that we must keep the peace in space. I don't think any of these countries are going to break their obligations in that Outer Space Treaty. And think about it, if we have two different bases on the moon, if we have an Artemis base and a Chinese and Russian base, if something goes wrong, those two bases have to rely on each other. And I actually see it as a very positive development. If we have two completely different bases, they're going to rely on each other and they're going to work with each other and they're going to partner with each other. And maybe that's how we get peace from space, actually, is when everybody who's been to space looks back and says, hey, look down, there are no boundaries on Earth. We make all of that up. And so hopefully the more people we can get to the moon from as many different countries as possible, the more we get this sense of, wait, we all belong together. We ought to be working together.
So hopefully these different efforts will come together and, as you said, really create peace in space. And well, Professor Yoo, before we go now, South Korea and the United States, they signed an agreement for cooperation on civil global navigation satellite systems, under which the US is going to support the development of South Korea's own SatNav. And well, what is the importance of boosting Korea's national GPS capability when considering its security as well as commercial technology?
Yes, as you can see, the GPS system in both of the aspects of commercial development, in particular in the fourth industrial revolution era, but also it is very critical technology for the security the perspective. So it is very much important area for side, and particularly we have to maybe to get lots of knowledge and experience from the U.S. side. In that sense, maybe the GPS system has to be a KPS system has to be in accordance with the compatibility and interoperability. So I think this is the beginning stage, and then I personally think now it's time to set up some working group level, active group level, to communicate what area we have to maybe make a roadmap for KPS and development in the policy and technical perspective. So now we have to step-by-step development a KPS system with the U.S. United States cooperation.
Well, I'm afraid this is where we'll have to end the interview today, but it looks like there's a lot of exciting developments to watch out for in the space arena. And well, that was Dr. Yoo Joonkoo, Research Professor of the Center for International Law at the Korean National Diplomat Academy, and Dr. Michelle L.D. Hanlon, space lawyer and co-founder of For All Moonkind. Thank you both so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And to our viewers, as always, thank you very much for watching.